And that's how I know I'm a corporate shill. What's going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more and class in Atlanta, Georgia. I am Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
We're a little late this week.
We are a little late this week. We couldn't quite get it together on Sunday or Monday, so here it is Tuesday. But it's now together. Here we are. We're together.
I thought it was a Wednesday. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, no, it's Tuesday.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's great news for me.
Yeah, well, it's going to have to be. I've got a quick overnight business trip tomorrow.
To the magical land of Bethesda.
I will fly into Reagan and take an Uber and sit in a conference room for 2 days in a hotel and then fly back. That's my next 48 hours.
I mean, we all can't live the dream, you know?
No, we can't.
And, you know, you're out there doing the Lord's work, you know. We couldn't.
But I don't know whose work it is, but let's not blame the Lord.
Well, fantastic. Let's see. Not a whole lot going on here. We're still in the, pre-show prep for this 80s, 90s, 2000s set that we've got coming up in about a month. The Strats are still sitting in bags, waiting to be taken to the shop. I'm hoping that I can get that done tomorrow. That's nice. I'm writing my goals down, things I've got to accomplish every day. And I think it's reached the top of the heap. So I don't know how long it's going to take to get them both back. So I probably need to get them in ASAP because, like I said, we have gigs in a few weeks. So
yep.
Cool beans. So this one might be a little brief because no reviews, no housekeeping, and we've got, a pretty solid topic to get into, but, we'll just see how long it takes to unpack really. So this was one of those things that just kind of popped up in the Patreon Slack. Somebody had mentioned that they had subbed for another band or really enjoyed, playing a different position. And so I was like, okay, here's a hypothetical question. If you didn't play the instrument that you play in your current group, what would you play and why? And I mean, it's a bit of a kind of convoluted journey there to get to the actual answer, but it is just kind of like a fun thought experiment, and it seemed to really capture people's imagination because once again, like the thread just like exploded. Everybody had a lot of thoughts about this. Is that ever like crossed your mind as you're kind of like building something or working in your existing groups?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about what it would be like to. I mean, basically, as much as I don't think it would fit my temperament, I do sometimes fantasize about not being the band leader, being the guy who just shows up and plays. And when I've been in those kinds of roles, I've enjoyed the lack of responsibilities that come with that. But also, when the decision making wasn't what I would want, it was really a grind to live with other people's decision making.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, it always feels like at least the specific question of if you weren't the band leader is the stuff that stresses me out about the gig are no longer my concern in that other position. So that's the appeal. I don't know if it's necessarily more fun to do whatever role that particular player does, or it's just the, fantasizing about not having to be stressed out about everything and every little detail.
If I could have all of the authority and none of the work, why, that'd be terrific.
Wow. What a concept.
Yeah.
It sounds really nice.
I know.
Not going to lie.
Capitalism, right? And you just need to hire those people and pay them pennies.
Delegate.
That's it. That's really the thing. But the question really is not like if you could not have to be all the things that are, hard about being a band leader. It was, what instrument would you play? And there were a couple that popped out.
It's really interesting because I feel like as a group primarily of band leaders, that's primarily what comprises our Patreon community. You got a lot of lead singers and lead guitar players or music directors or whatever. But it seems like, with few exception, they're always looking for like something that they perceive as less of a lift. And I feel like one of those might be a bit on the money. The other one maybe not quite thought through so much, but it was overwhelmingly, if you didn't play what you played, I'd be a drummer or a bass player.
Yep.
And bass player was my first choice. Because I played bass in other bands. I played bass in my band. To me, it feels like less work because your fingers are doing less. I don't know. But it's when I have to play bass on a gig, like that sucks, but I'm also like stoked for it. Because like some stuff had to go wrong in order to get in that position, but now that we're here, we can make it work. Well, yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah, I've subbed on bass a couple of times. I was main bassist in an early band that I was in, and I will say there's a world of difference between a bassist and a guitarist slumming it on bass.
It's fair.
Those are not the same creatures. I'm a guitarist slumming it on bass, and which means I'm competent enough to hold down the harmony, but there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to be able to do because it's not my main instrument. That said, being able to show up to the gig with your whole rig on your back, that sounds like a good time to me. I'm all about that. Also, with the bassist, I'm going to draw a lot of heat on this one, but with the bassist that I have personally worked with, it takes a lot of showing up 20 minutes late to get fired.
Sad but true.
I don't know what it is about bassists, and I know there are some that are punctual. My last one was, but boy, oh boy, bassist time really seems to be a thing.
Yeah. So one of our subs is the guy that will roll in 10 minutes before downbeat, but he's also the guy who can do that gig in his sleep. And I don't worry about because his monitor mix is not my problem. He's going to figure it out. And he knows these songs inside and out and has like everything. He has everything I need and maybe a little then some, as far as like just what he can do on short notice. So he gets he gets away with murder because
he can show up when he wants. It's all good.
Because I know he'll deliver when he gets there. But yeah, that is kind of an interesting, thought experiment about who does what in relation to band roles and that kind of thing. And that's probably not fair to bass players. I'm sure there are plenty of bass playing band leaders out there that are doing a lot of the lifting outside of, whatever.
Yeah.
And a very good bass player is worth its weight in gold, not to diminish their role because good bass players make all the difference in the end product for sure.
Absolutely. And bring a lot of their personality to it. My last bass player was very accomplished and pretty much a straight ahead classic rock and blues guy. The one before that was a jazz bassist, really, and like both extremely competent and really a difference in the whole band sound between the two of them. And I loved both of them, but it was really amazing to see how much their own background and training and personality influenced what what our end product was.
I just don't want a repeat of the Dark Glass video where we have all these bass players just coming at us.
Yeah. No, we love you. We love you, bass players. We appreciate you. We value you. We make fun of you because of...
Yes, and I am one of you. I don't care what people say. I was the guitar player slumming it on bass 20 years ago, but I've been playing bass for 20 years at this point. So like, I feel like I have evolved past, the initial categorization. Like I feel like I have some bassual instincts that are outside the realm of what a guitar player would normally do.
That could be I honor bass players enough to not claim that I am one.
Fair enough. So all hate mail can be directed right at me. My full name, mailing address, it's all in the show notes. You can just come get me, string me up.
Get him.
Anywho.
But the second choice was drums. The second most popular was drums.
And the perception of it is so interesting to me because the initial response for the first person to say drums was a lead guitar player. And he was saying it was because like they get to have more fun. They get to point the sticks at the girls and they're like, if it doesn't feel like as, I get to sit down the whole time and all of that. It's just like, I think it's wild to think that a drummer does less work than a guitar player does, like just in the totality of the gig, I guess.
Oh, there's no way. Load is completely like on a totally different level. And then the physical endurance, the physical effort of the gig itself, way higher.
Yeah.
Way higher. Now, you look cool.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of am a drummer. I played drums a few times in a couple of things. I played in my high school jazz band, among other things. So I have a little bit of background in that. a guitarist slumming it on drums, maybe is what I am. That's it's a big crossover.
It's a
I'm
bit
not
more
sure
of a
that's
stretch.
a thing, but yeah,
Depending on the
but
gig,
I can't play.
maybe you could get there.
Yeah, I can play some
Yeah.
drums. I'm not as good as somebody who would call themselves a drummer, but I have done it.
Well, and everybody knows what the first thing that the guitar player does when there's like a break at band practice is to go sit behind the drum kit.
Sit in the drum kit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what they do.
Right.
The guitarist to drum pipeline is pretty well established that every guitar player wants to be a drummer and vice versa.
Right.
But not for 1 second did I think, oh, they get to sit down and that's a net benefit, compared to everything else they have to endure.
I know. I watch drummers mopping themselves down between sets, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not an easy gig.
No thanks.
Yeah.
But
fun, maybe fun.
yeah,
But
and yeah, I mean, people don't really air bass when they're driving, but playing drums, it's like just getting out there, and I like pretending like I can play drums and like do like the big stick tricks and stuff. I can't do any of it.
Finger twirls.
Yeah. But like my air drumming is pretty impeccable. I feel like that's a skill that I've curated over decades at this point.
Sure.
But no drums for me. Like, it's fun to think about, especially considering the fact that we both carry production. And Mark Budwitt, who's been a Patreon member forever now, is a drummer band leader.
Yeah.
The amount of cartage that guy has to like do on a giggly basis is just outrageous.
Yeah, unreal.
I like that, giggly. We're gonna write that down.
Yeah.
Write that down. So outside of the guitarist to drummer pipeline and vice versa, there were a couple of folks that were like, I actually wouldn't be in the band at all.
Right.
And they said that they would much rather be like the front of house person mixing the band live.
Yeah.
And that sparked its own really kind of interesting conversation, because most of the people who own the sound equipment are the ones that run it. So, I've got this big old rig, and I've definitely mixed before, but it's typically not my job. I hire somebody to do that, and it is just one thing off my plate that I don't want to worry about. But the things that I have had to learn just by owning all of this stuff has given me this additional ability, this skill set, where I can go into a scenario and troubleshoot, signal chains effectively and EQ stuff and dial things in pretty quickly.
Yep.
And if the ultimate goal is to be as busy as possible and leverage whatever opportunities might come your way, the ability to fit in all of those different roles becomes much more important.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be a guitar player who can sub as a bass player, or a guitarist who can, or a vocalist who can, sit in at a different position. But what if you could also run a full rig for a show? Well, that just opened up an entirely different lane of work that you wouldn't have available to you.
Yeah.
If that's ultimately what you're after.
Yeah. And then getting smart about that feeds back and informs your main instrument.
Right.
Like I didn't have, not that my ears are great and not that I care that much about tone in a live context, but it wasn't really until I started mixing a whole band that I started to really understand how my guitar lived sonically, what kind of frequencies it took up and what that meant in terms of other instruments. And, I started thinking about all that a lot more completely when I had a full band to mix. And I think if somebody else had been driving that mix, I don't think I'd have been exposed to the problems that I needed to solve that needed me to learn that,
Yeah. The thing that I have really become aware of as time has gone on is, as a guitar player who listens to, the multi-tracks of our recordings and, has run things from different positions, I play a lot less than I used to.
Yes.
It's realizing that, like, oh, what this part of the song really needs is just diamonds on the one, and let everything else just kind of do what it needs to do around you. Because otherwise you're just kind of contributing to the noise. And it's nice because I feel like by internalizing that thought process. I've become a much more solid performer because I have kind of dialed it in and it's optimized and it's exactly what it needs to be and nothing more. And I can dedicate whatever bandwidth I was dedicating to that part of it to some other part of it, you know?
Yeah.
All of these things change you and make you better. So, you know, if you can pick up a side gig or sit in on somebody else's front of house deal or whatever, just to kind of like see if you could pick it up, I would absolutely do that.
Yeah, and then there is stuff about playing bass. You know, it's kind of like being a polyglot, right? Having more than one language.
Yes.
Languages approach the concepts of reality in different ways. And, you know, the summer that I spent in France, where I came back basically fluent, I really noticed that I thought differently. I came back thinking and dreaming in French, and there were syntactic things and turns of phrase and stuff that were different than the structures of how English thinks and encodes stuff. And I found that my brain was different. It was really interesting. And, you know, to think about a song from the perspective of bass really changes how you see the song and how you can cope with the song and what you might bring to it on guitar. I think having a polyglot approach to all of this is a really big strength.
Yeah. And you can get those sensibilities through other means. I feel like I really internalized the stuff that we're playing, building the tracks, because you are spending all of this time like soloing instruments and really like breaking stuff down. And so you really do understand the songs on I don't know a better way to, a more intimate level, because you are more aware of all the different components. And so I feel like I know a lot more about what synths and stuff do just based on having to break down, okay, well, when they did this in the studio, this was 7 different tracks they had to stack on top of each other. Like, just knowing that stuff informs the way that you approach whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and then having that understanding of a track helps you coach your people, right?
For better or worse.
You know, if you're good, you got to be a good coach to be in this game, right? But, you know, oh, listen, in the bridge it does this.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, neat. I never heard it. Like, I've heard the song a lot, but I never heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's because I spent hours grieving over how the track was going to sound, and I know it now. I know it in a way I never did before.
Yeah, or I notice it when it's not there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's really what it is. It's just having an ear for detail.
Yeah. But informed by having done the work, right? You know, the number of songs that I thought I knew because I listened to them infinitely when I was a teen, you know, and then I play them the way my memory has them, and then they come on the radio again. I'm like, whoa, what? That's not something. It's a Mandela effect. That's not how that song goes.
Yeah, I definitely have those moments where I hear a song on the radio and I was like, oh, you never did learn the words, did you? You just kind of strung a bunch of sounds together.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is like just a cool thought experiment. I don't know if other people have done the kind of work we've done unpacking this kind of stuff, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And it's also a good way to challenge yourself. I mean, if you want to be a musical polyglot, the only way that you get to that point is to start gigging on an instrument that you're not 100% on.
Right. And
just, you know, chipping away at becoming more competent on the instrument.
Right.
So is this something that you could challenge yourself with? If there is a deficiency, whether you perceive it or not, that could be remedied by trying a different pathway, well, how would you pursue that? How could you make it work in your existing schedule? What feels like a lift that's worth the effort, but, you know, isn't going to completely wipe you out? You know, there's a lot of ways to approach this. And I think ultimately you'll be better for it in the end.
100%.
I'm just letting everybody know I've quit. I'm no longer the lead vocalist for Members Only. I am only the bass player.
Okay.
And now it's somebody else's problem, but it's not my problem to solve now anymore. I have abdicated my role as effective immediately.
That's right.
I've
the
already
power
cleaned up my
vacuum.
desk.
The power vacuum will get filled by whoever fills it, and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
If only.
Yeah, Johnson out.
A man can dream.
Yeah.
Anywho, what do you guys think? Is this something that you would be into if there is a position that you would want to switch to in your band, what is it? Let us know. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com.
Yeah, and make your case for it. Tell us why that position is like, oh, I'd rather be doing. I don't know if I'd rather, but if I wasn't doing this, that would be my thing.
Yeah, this seems like a next best thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, I feel like we covered a lot of ground in the time that we had, and it's just going to be one of those super dense, nutritious, tiny little episodes where you can just take it like a vitamin and be on your way.
Love it.
That's what we're here for. Guys and gals, thanks so much for tuning in. Couldn't do it without you. Would anyway, but glad we don't have to. If you'd like to support the show, you can do any of the things that you're about to hear, but I'll go ahead and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I am Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Cover Band I cut you off there. You have been listening. Ready?
Yeah.
Just smiling. You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of July 11th, 2025.
I don't know what happened there, but
Smile.
I'm taking notes. That's all.
Oh, man.